People of Earth and listeners of Living with Will, thank you so much for tuning in this week, and I'm incredibly ecstatic to welcome you all for a wonderful episode. This week's guest is not only an incredible hip-hop artist, but also one of the most enlightened individuals I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and I think we're all going to benefit from this episode. As always, if you like the podcast, like, comment, subscribe. But regardless of all that, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome back, and welcome to the interview with the one, the only, Fifth God.
Beautiful, man. Honestly, the topic of plant medicines and honoring the sacred and these spiritual practices that I've developed over the years, that's like the real meat of what I like to focus on in my life as of now. And, the podcast certainly reflects that, and I hope to continue to reflect more of that. But this is the stuff that really nourishes me so that I'm able to do all the other things that I like to do, as you've mentioned. So,
Yeah. It's Fab Five Freddy right here, and I'm enjoying what my man Fifth God is laying out for y'all right now. That's right, pay close attention, because Fifth God dropping knowledge. Fab Five Freddy, I'm in the building, baby. 100.
Gentrification is a bitch I never get with. Gentrification is a bitch I never get with. Gentrification is a bitch I never get with. The other day, I'm stepping in my motherfucking building that I grew up in my neighborhood of 22 years. It might look nice to the sleep pedestrian, but yo, the color has changed. Old white bitch looking at me like I don't belong here. Bitch looking at me like how and why. I pulled out the key on her ass. Knowledge yourself, nigga.
Why I got the science to make my starting point the bright sky. Claim Caucasian, the dark probation, that's a white lie. Sabotage from the devil's pie with the rhymes I memorize. Step aside, pop culture, but Pulitzer when I sketch a line. You the Baphomet, real estate accident, the expert. You flush degrees down the drain and chose skin as the network. You Jesus walk until your legs hurt. Then first class in school of hard knocks. Graduated from stealing from mom, the purse snatching. That violent style done got us wild enough to hurt cops. Hip hop was dead and resurrected when my verse dropped. Figured the game out. I shirt lock scrimmage, a sure shot. Go with the text like Silicon Valley for the dinner on my curbs hot. Peeps stuck in four corners, candles lit, make street money. Panhandling in Pan's Labyrinth for 90s, baby. Came out the coochie, rockin' the Coogee. Give my mama a jacuzzi. Marcus Garvey and some Stussy.
Yo, you know what I never thought I'd miss?
When I thought about bringing Fifth God onto the podcast, I thought there's no fucking chance. This man's he doesn't have time. He's not about to sit down with you. I was wrong. And how fortunate I am to have been wrong. I spent some time in New York, and I figured, listen, an interview like this, it'd be a waste if I didn't tell you a little bit of backstory. I spent some time in New York as an outsider looking in on the beauty and the wonder that is New York hip-hop culture. I was able to immerse myself in it, and I was able to make some great friends and see some incredible art and some wildly entertaining shows. But there were some individuals while I was there that were larger than life. Madwiz, Radamiz, Mogul Club, IOD, Devon, Cypher League, Rat King, Solomon Phi, Illusion, Apostrophe, Scienze, LaChacha Al Sindor, EVA. These are some of the names that you would hear if you were living in New York and you had your ear to the street and you knew what the fuck was good. To have any of these people appear on my podcast would floor me. The fact that I already have two of them is outstanding, and the fact that Fifth God, the man himself, was willing to take an interview with me, it's one of the highlights of my life. I would be running around with people, and it would just be like you'd hear a story that he'd taken part in a shoot, or that he was taking a trip to South America to study plant medicines, or that he was working on the fifth tape. In my eyes, one of the greatest hip hop productions ever put together. And without giving too much away what we're going to discuss, if it hasn't been made aware yet to you as the listener, this podcast is very engaged in trying to create conversations that can help push us all forward. And, while I try to keep it light and have fun sometimes, I always try and maintain that. I'm trying to help, and I'm trying to do something here where I bring people on that I think can help you on whatever journey you're on. And to have someone like Fifth God come on and speak with me, I think we're all in for a lot of learning, and I couldn't be happier for us all. And also be sure, if you enjoy listening to Fifth God here, go tune in to his podcast, Masters of Ceremony. It's an incredible interview series podcast with some incredible guests, and you will not be sorry. So that podcast, again, is Masters of Ceremony, and enjoy the interview with Fifth God. Thank you all so much. Put on your seatbelts, lock in, focus on the road, take a seat, smoke a J, crack a brew. We're in for a great one. Welcome back to Living with Will.
Yo, you know what I never thought I'd miss? Walking down Franklin Ave and not being able to walk down certain blocks cutting through. Shit's crazy, yo. I get out the train on Franklin on the 4 train, and I just see a whole bunch of different shit. I can buy almond milk at the stores and all that. What's up
How
with that?
I feel, I'm God-made magic. I raise average, rain catcher, king shine light, lane crafter. The city focused on cream and gold crowns. I'm busy making these dreams below grounds. It's real. This bling no diamond. It's all timing, all mining. Remove all pressure. We all shining. It's all matter. We all gon' eat. It's all platters, all water. Big like bowl, just more fatter. Word. Radamiz tell Fifth to pour a drink. These times be timed wrong. These songs are small fish. Let's move. The planet of Brooklyn don't look the same. They blocking us from our blocks, jocking us out our fame. It's simple, we on a plane. Simple and plain, it's plain proof. The proof is our hoods got newer names. Insane. This new generation don't see the change. They aiming is aimed off. Yo, Miz, we got that
Father
range.
God, I pray. Remember what you said to me. I and we are peace. But a house is not a home if you can't sleep. Worry about the next meal you gon' eat, or the next bill you gon' meet. Wondering if we could stay for good, living in this neighborhood.
So I'll start us off, we share, our connection stems through music, right? I think I first met you and heard about you through Devon at over at Dojo Records. Fucking much love to Devon, and then also through IO.
Definitely.
Yeah, so being that that's the case, I want to take it to the beginning with that, and I wanted to ask you, how did you get into music, and who introduced you to it?
Oh man, music in general. That's a whole journey in and of itself that would probably take a while to explain, but I'll try to give you the shorthand version. But basically, basically growing up, I'm the youngest of 5 boys in my family. So I have 4 older brothers, and I'm the youngest, right? So growing up in the 90s, I was seeing my older brothers just do everything the typical New Yorker was doing in the 90s, breakdancing, skateboarding, listening to Wu-Tang, listening to all types of obscure hip-hop. And I kind of just soaked all that up as a child. So I would say, hip-hop music was presented to me at an extremely young age through my older brothers. And I just instantly fell in love with it. I knew that it had a certain energy and presence that differed from other genres of music I was hearing at the time. And it wasn't like I was also just being exposed to hip-hop on the radio. It was like I was hearing the real underground cassettes that my brothers would be bumping in their cars and at home that they would be breakdancing to. So from a young age, I really just felt attracted to and also curious about the entire culture of hip-hop, not only the music side of things. But as I grew older, and as I said, I don't want to make it too long of a story, but as I grew older, I definitely felt like I wanted to get involved in music in some capacity. And something most people don't know, except for some of my close homies, like Blank, is that when I was like 14, 15, around there, I wanted to be a rapper. And I tried that out for a bit, and I used to write, and sometimes I still do write, maybe more in the form of poetry now, but I quickly realized that wasn't my path, and that I wanted to contribute in a musical manner in a different way. And by the time I graduated high school, I felt a deep attraction to more of the behind-the-scenes sides of things, specifically when it came to audio engineering and the people who were mixing these records and doing all the technical stuff, and also the people who were serving as record producers in the original sense of the term, not record producer meaning beat maker, but record producer meaning the person who is guiding the overall creative direction of the song or album. People like Quincy Jones and Tom Dowd and all these different OGs, who were kind of a little bit behind the scenes, but were some of the people who were actually most important in the process of certain classics, So, yeah, I went to school for audio engineering, went to University of New Haven for a year, and then I transferred back home to Long Island, went to school at Five Towns College, where I had met all of the homies who I'm still cool with now, like the Mobile Club family, History and Madwiz and King Critical and Radamiz. And yeah, History and I went to school together. History was basically my gateway into the entire music culture of Brooklyn at the time. He's the one who introduced me to like people like IOD, and through History, I ended up meeting, the whole Cypher League family. And I guess that's kind of how me and you started running into some of the same rooms and peaks. So that's just a little short summary of how music has led us to meet each other.
And your history with music as well. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
It all tied in together. So what drives you as a creative? What do you think you pull from as far as not just your appreciation for the music, but what do you think drives you to create? And take part in it yourself. And who are some of your biggest? You named a few, but
yeah, no doubt. I think one of the biggest things that drove me to create and still drives me is just wanting to be a part of all of this beautiful art that we see being created on the daily. I grew up looking at these different artists in the game who I really respected. Let's say we're just speaking about hip hop artists right now. I grew up wanting to meet these people. And not only that, I grew up wanting to work with them. And I wanted to feel like I was contributing back to a culture that provided me with so much nourishment and lessons and teachings. And I always say that hip-hop and music raised me as if it was like a third parent of mine, So I kind of wanted to not just take, but also give back a bit. And I saw that becoming a creative artist in this field was the best way to give back and show that I really cared about this culture. So, when I really started making music seriously with my bro, Blank Noriega, who's an incredible producer, he's produced some tracks for ILD, for Radamiz, for History, for all of them, and a bunch of others. Him and I were like really partners in crime, and we're just hang out every day and speak about this dream of just like making an album that consisted of all of our homies, but also some legends in the game who we really respected. And this is what eventually turned into my debut album, The Fifth Tape. And I was really in a state in my life, this was back in like when I was 19, 20 years old, where I was feeling that creative desire to create as you speak to. And I was just sending Hail Mary emails to different artists, who I had never met and who certainly didn't know who the hell I was. But, people like Sky Zoo and Fisham and Ab-Soul and
Love that.
Tragedy Gaddafi, like all these different people.
Yeah.
And I was in a state of like, I got nothing to lose. And I think because of that and the way I was like writing these emails to these people, I mean, almost every single person I attempted to get on the project ended up being on it, you know? So like,
that's insane.
Someone like, yeah. Well, it was insane, man, for sure. It is to this day. Like, I remember like hearing a beat that Blank had made, and I said, I want to get Dash and Ab-Soul on this beat, you know? And like, I knew Dash was possible because we were kind of running around some same circles, and I did some work for him. But at that point, you know, this was like post Control System Ab-Soul, leading into like when Ab-Soul was working on the These Days album. And I just sat in my car for about like 6 months listening to this one track that Blank had produced, just envisioning Ab-Soul rapping on it, not knowing how the hell I was going to make it happen. And there's a lot of different aspects that go into the story of how it eventually happened, but it actually manifested. And it was a really beautiful moment for me. And I bring this up because I had such a strong creative desire to be a part of this culture that I feel like I kind of willed my way into the industry without having any prior connections. So the inspiration that I feel to create is to consistently be a part of something that I think is so beautiful, and wanting to contribute, and also maybe sometimes I have a little bit of FOMO when it comes to hip hop culture. You know, I don't want to only be receiving the music, which is just as fine.
Right.
You know, and I am a fan at the end of the day, but I feel like I care about it so much that I want to contribute. So that's definitely one of the biggest motivating factors for creating this music for me.
That was a profound and awesome answer. First of all, I love it because you kind of visualize your dream for something, and it happened. And I think it's really important that people hear that it does happen sometimes, where like you want something bad enough, and through whatever crazy ways, and I'm sure like the full story of how Ab-Soul and Dash got on that track, but like when you visualize something, you don't know how it's gonna happen, but if you work for it, and if you put in the necessary time, it happens sometimes. Like it can happen.
"17 more minutes, nigga. You ain't fucking know. Yeah, it's off. Finger paints off on the paper. Got the joint tasting light. Now or later. I fucking now and then she shower later. All of my power seem to cower haters. Cars sparrow, get my flowers catered. We don't deliver in case you ain't hearing me, nigga. It's clear to me, nigga. Most of these rappers ain't what they appear to be. I'm who they here to see, nigga. It's only evident. Grandmother say my style like heaven sent, but I still fuck hoes, get bent. Think hell is my home address. Have I loaded gas? Rolling G City in a stolen flex. Hogan flex while I choke the chef. He overcooked the meal. Battle scars on the whip. I named the seal. We by the field. Dark liquor niggas who's trained to kill. Cracking the seal on the brick. Measure and pour my fix. Prescription beverage give me leverage on the bars that I pick. Mentally sick, shit, I'm criminal minded. Lost my brain, leave a message on my line if you find it, motherfucker. So if you ain't know, don't know which way it's up. Don't know which way it's up.
Mic check, 1, 2, yo. It's Ab-Soul, don't forget the dash. My nigga Dash, 5th guy, full tank of gas. I light a match and write a rap. You ask why? Why is that? It's cause I blew up just like the sky. Boom. Clever, yes sir. Bet your bottom dollar or your favorite pair of red bottoms. It's not a problem. I don't give a fuck. No condom will be needed. You looking for luck? No skill or preparation to receive it. Peel the plastic off a pack of ports. Took a drag and ashed it. The apple of your eye is probably last night's applesauce. Jack your apple for less than a bowl of Apple Jacks. Real hip hop, you rabbits had just been jacking off. And these days I'm getting high enough to bite the clouds. I don't know which way is up, but it's going down. And it's a blank beat, like not a sound.
Yeah, shut up. This shit is a prank. She fucking for Nikes, just keeping it frank. I'm the one, but I'm keeping the franks. I get video stank, fill me with thanks. Or I'm leaving your wifey like Hillary Banks. Watch a hubby go down the channel. Trigger finger, the shit I can't handle. How to blow an IRL and a URL without going D4L. This is Brooklyn, pussy, get the details well. Hookah, Hagen, Henny, Hoodin, Azad, Talik for mixing both up. Nasty like I'm doing it for ill will. Still put a meal, not a pill in the pockets. I'm a real. Uncle quarter body, crib got hit with robbery. All this made me bout it. You kill your mother for 100K plays and get fame through an internet router. Panic attacks and still play a show where baby's alright and shoes for power. Debit don't swipe it or retweet or like me, the enlightenment and praying dollar. My brody was going through coke fist. If he ain't spit it can, he think he not the man. Sage in my hand, fucking roasted. No cleaning my mind, I got too many plans. You made me confessing to God. Yesterday I could've died. I was supposed to go a couple years ago, I write so I could stay alive.
You just can't be afraid to have the conversation. You gotta be open to it at all times. Whether you afraid to speak or not. If I'm not here for you, God is. God's always open to conversation. I'm your brother, I'm always open to conversation. Be free. I'm about to write a book on y'all niggas, son.
Yeah. That's just, I'm really grateful for your answer, and also grateful that I was like wondering how I was going to transition from one topic to the next. And just as you were answering the question, I was like, this is what I love about podcasts, because people just like, for some reason, they just, when they answer questions, you're like, oh my God, this is perfect. He's literally going to leave. But anyways, this is just me rambling.
No, I as a podcaster, I know exactly what you're referring to.
Yo, wild. Yes. There's going to be some things I'm going to say where it's just like, I'm so glad that you also do this so you can relate. But I have a lot to learn about as myself, and I have a lot of growing to do as a person, right? And one thing I'm trying to do is speak more with intention and really just explain in the similar ways that you were listening to Ab-Soul so much, and you could see, or you were listening to the track with him in mind, and you saw him on it. I have like a vision for myself as well, and I'm trying to realize it. And just as I get to know myself better, I learn more how I can visualize my dreams, you know? And listening to your podcast is one of those things too. But you know, I'm trying to, and so what I was saying with the ways that I'm working on myself, what are some of the things that, you know, you're trying to understand better about yourself right now and within yourself?
Wow, thank you, brother. It's a beautiful and deep question, because that's a question I ask myself sometimes, you know, like, what am I working on right now? Because sometimes you can get so like sucked into the matrix of like just being in a routine of working on something that you don't consciously think like, oh, what am I actually working on or working towards, or what are some things I need to work on? And for me, I'll just maybe give a response of something I'm working on like in this moment as of like today in 2020. And that is becoming really clear on what I want and actually being able to articulate it clearly to myself, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine this week that usually the roadblocks people face when it comes to achieving their goals is not the grandiosity of the goals themselves, but just not having a clear specification of what they want. You know, it's like if you don't know exactly what you want or what you're striving for, you're kind of going to get taken in any direction the wind takes you, you know? And although I am someone who, you know, throughout my journey, there's definitely been moments where I'm super focused and I know exactly what I want and what I want to achieve and the things I need to do that. I've definitely also have been someone who has had moments where I don't know exactly what I want, and I don't know exactly how to take that next step. And, right now I'm doing this podcast, Masters of Ceremony, as you've seen, and I'm sure we'll discuss. And, I've gotten into a good rhythm with some of the interviews and the production of it, and I'm still exploring and experimenting, but I'm working on right now personally getting really clear on what I want to achieve regarding this podcast and the steps necessary to do it. And outside of like a career-oriented answer, something else I'm working on, just on maybe a spiritual level and personal level, is really expressing my most authentic self without any apprehension, like really, really being who I fully am and not having any anxiety about sharing these different aspects of myself. And I bring that up because as maybe you've known just from following me online, I'm not someone who easily fits into a box, I'm like super into hip hop culture and like, some of the more hardcore side of things in street culture and everything. Then I'm also really into spirituality and herbalism and natural healing. And I think it throws certain people for a loop sometimes because they may see me, like shooting like a crazy video for my boy History or something, like see me doing crazy work in hip hop, but then they see me like having a discussion with a shaman or something,
right?
And and for me, sometimes I've even been a little shy about that. Like, society always wants to put people in a box so they can label them, and I have found that I don't fit into any of these boxes. And what I'm realizing now is that that's totally all right, and if anything, that's actually my biggest blessing in life, is that I'm not unidimensional. So that's something I'm definitely working on as well. Is just continuing to express all of my interests, knowing that they all don't need to make sense with one another.
Hey, yeah. Hey, nigga. Big Clyde, nigga. On the vibes, nigga. Shit, nigga. I'm saying. Nigga Pacino and shit. Hey, turn me up, nigga. Yeah. Oh, chill like a motherfucker and shit. Hey, that demo, fifth guard, fifth tape, yeah. Guard your temple, cough your lung, I cross me, Jah forbid you. My hustle's polished, hate abolished, hope the gods forgive you. I sip like prohibition, coalition, confidential. I slip the potent in the potion, cap the chromie pistol. We can't be homies, dog, they pulled your card, plays unofficial. Unless you got it, flying by your head like knowledge out the pencil. I threw some mileage on this rental, fuck y'all trying to get into. Promised I'll never change, can't promise that I won't forget you. Yeah, look. Yo, we really recognize this real kid, and you ain't really real enough to feel the kid. Man, we told this fuck exactly what these feelings did. Yo, Oxycontin, codeine, baking soda, unholy prayers, backwards motives. Packed to that bonfire by Union Square. My bitch still holds that heat if I need her. New product sponsored by Nina. New occupation, she's the Spotify pleaser. My pops taught me how to bust a shot. That nigga did. My mama found out circle around the block. She whipped my ass 2 hours later outside open shop. Ain't have to search, I had to work, I had the money plot. Step back to the money shot, bet the corner off the lot. The cleanest thing on the scene, the meanest engine, you can fit in the Jeep. The dopest dope, your ass just might ever smoke. Straight to the cranium, it's funny. Though that was the spun singing like Damien. Young wild spontaneous, black driven and money motivated. Shit, if I wasn't me, I probably always hated keep it 100. I feel your plight, partner. In fact, I even almost felt you up when that mic started. So high off that hype, bought it, just pipe down and go cold turkey. Quit the whole operation, no one even known your jersey. You played the best from the streets to the league, nigga. We know the stats, keep it real. You ain't seen clutch moments, just person snatch misdemeanors. People demeanor, somehow I notice facts. I got a bitch round your way, I fall through so relaxed. I'm off this so detached, can't find a reason to give a fuck. So if you see me sliding at 2 a.m., hope you know what's up. We really recognize this real kid, and you ain't really real enough to feel like kid. Now you ain't really real enough to feel like kid. Let me code this fuck exactly what these feelings did. Yo.
I'm I'm just sitting. I'm so grateful for the fact that you agreed to this podcast, because this is the reason I brought you on. Is I think that the things you have to say are and will benefit so many more people. Because I'm just listening to you like, damn, I fucking agree with everything he's saying, man. Like, it's crazy. It's really wild. And like, you know, what you're discussing too is kind of like it's your self-fulfillment, and it's like your true self, and that you're like becoming comfortable with being who you really are. And I really hope that more people begin to do that, because I feel like a lot of people, man, you know, I mean, I'm sure you know this, people are just lost. Like, there's
100%.
Yeah. But on a lighter note, you know, returning to that path of self-fulfillment, like hearing your podcast, like you said, Masters of Ceremony, and part of why I wanted to bring you on was to make other people go listen to that. Because I think,
man, thank you, bro.
No, the power of healing that I've heard you discuss, and like just the topics that you share with your guests on your show as well, is really powerful. And I wanted to kind of just discuss a little bit, what's the experience been like having your podcast and going down the path that's taking you on?
Yeah, man, it has been it's been a deep journey for me, and maybe you can relate to this as well. I'm sure other podcasters can. Is that, you know, people are seeing these episodes that I've been releasing recently, and the podcast is a pretty recent development, at least outwardly on a public level, but it's actually been in the works, I would say, for maybe even a couple years now, even though I just released the first episode back in, I don't know exactly when, April or March. But, yeah, it's been something that I've wanted to do for some time now, and that's because in recent years, I probably listen to podcasts just as much, if not more, than I listen to music, honestly. And they have served as such a deep form of education for me in various different capacities. And, you know, I'm someone who, I live out on Long Island, even though I do a lot of work in Brooklyn in the city, but I drive, so I'm like always in my car, you know? And, yeah, when I really got into podcast heavy, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, I just saw the amazing opportunity they provided to learning about certain topics and certain individuals while you have this quote unquote free time, you know, while you're driving, when you're on a walk, you know, washing the dishes, you know, when you're doing things that you can't necessarily read a book or watch a video, you could always listen to a podcast, you know. And I think the position I have found myself in within our circle of peers also has allotted me the blessing of being exposed to so many dope creatives and individuals. And also, you know, to circle back to what I was speaking about earlier, you know, how I'm someone who studies so many different disciplines and facets of life. I feel like I have a pretty wide directory of people I can reach out to who can speak on many different subjects. So I feel like it was kind of inevitable for me to start some type of platform that eventually turned into a podcast. So for me, I've just been learning so much about myself and about my guest on so many different levels, you know, just from, you know, I'm learning a lot just regarding the whole technical side of things. Even though I'm a super technical person, I've definitely learned a lot just of how to make the whole process a bit more efficient. You know, I'm really something I don't think people know, which is a big compliment, is that I'm doing everything by myself. So,
I did not know that. That's unreal.
yeah, man. And, you know, maybe just to give a little context for people who don't know how much goes into it. I mean, I'm setting up, you know, these interviews with guests. I'm interviewing the guest in person 90% of the time. So recording the audio, which I needed to invest into this audio equipment. I'm recording the audio. I'm doing a 2-camera setup. So I'm filming the interview as well, all by myself. And then I'm conducting the interview, of course, which takes preparation, as you know. And then I have to edit and mix the audio, you know, which ranges from an hour to 2 hours. And that is an entire process. And then I have to edit the 2-camera video myself. And I have to sync up the audio from the podcast to that and clean up any little mistakes. And also switch back and forth on the video to the speaker. And then I got to make promo. And then I have to do all the podcast uploading and hosting and the web design and thumbnails for the YouTube video, and then the actual text of, the captions for the promotion. And as you are seeing, I'm sure as well, it's a lot of work.
Definitely
it's a lot
is
of work for one person.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
I love that you're touching on this too, because people are like, Will, why don't you make a video for yours, and why don't you do that? I'm like, you guys, like, I'm learning, and I'm really grateful for your podcast too, and the fact that it's really interesting. We started our podcast almost on the same day, but you can hear, if you ever listen to both of our podcasts, the sound quality difference. I mean, you can tell how much more time and how much more knowledgeable you are than I am, because my audio is trash. But luckily, I have a friend who's an engineer who helps me. Shout out to Daniel Brooks and Goddess Sound Studio. Because I would sound horrible without them.
No, man, you're making it work. And something that I've had to learn for myself as well is that, yes, for me, I went to school for audio engineering. Like, the audio is of utmost importance to me. But, I mean, there's definitely been some of my favorite podcasts or lectures I've heard where the audio isn't that great. But at the end of the day, if the content is good,
right,
you kind of forget about the audio completely. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are doing podcasts just straight on their phone or straight on just like a little cheap like super microphone or something. And in my eyes, it's like at the end of the day, as long as you can hear the person and it's like somewhat leveled and not just jumping up and down in volume, that's all that matters. But yeah, man, I mean, definitely for me, I couldn't be an audio engineer and not make sure that the audio is top notch. So I really appreciate that, man. And for you, it's really just, it's a journey, and thank God you do have your homie who can help you mix and everything.
Yeah,
so.
Seriously.
Yeah, man.
No, I appreciate that. And, I appreciate too that it's a learning process as it is for me, but as I'm sure it is for you, like you were saying, there's always going to be something where you're like, I wasn't prepared for. Let me ask you that though. What's an example of something that like you were one of your episodes where something went wrong, or so you had to kind of call an audible?
Oh man, I've had that happen. Not almost every episode, but it's happened often. So like, I mean, just on a technical level, I have the 2-camera setup, but one of the cameras has a 30-minute recording limit. Okay. Meaning like you have to re-engage the record button every 30 minutes. So if I don't have somebody there, which I don't, I actually need to get up and re-engage the camera. And there's been a couple times where I got so into the conversation that 30 minutes passed, and there's a big chunk of the conversation where that camera wasn't recording.
Lost your time.
Yeah, completely. Which thank God I'm at least aware enough to have backup plan, and that's why I do have a 2-camera setup where the camera that doesn't cut off is the camera that is filming both me and the guest. So I could always rely on that if that happens. But that's happened a bunch, and I kind of realized that later. And some other ways I've kind of had to just kind of you got to roll with the punches as you're having the conversation. Something I'm realizing, and I know you're realizing it in this conversation right now, is that sometimes you have points that you want to bring up. And you may have like a timeline of how you may want to bring up these points, but then the conversation gets started, and the way the guest is speaking kind of initiates you to have to address something maybe earlier than expected, or kind of right away. It's like the guest almost actually is the one dictating the direction of the conversation. So I've definitely had to like be prepared to speak on something I wanted to speak on maybe earlier than expected, and also just be aware of like the energy of the conversation itself. Like, be aware of, is this, is it getting a little dry in this area? Like, should I ask this question now? Should I just let the person keep on speaking? It's been a great deal of practice of like learning how to be just a good interviewer, man. and learning that it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I love it, and it makes me like, I mean, see, you're like a jack of all trades in many ways, because you're like, you're shooting film, you're making the podcast, you're a producer, you're a sound engineer as well. I mean, you went to school for it, but are you also working as a sound engineer?
Well, maybe I would say for myself and for some of the homies.
Okay.
It's not something I'm earning a living from. At
Which
least not right now.
you know how you know what you're doing. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
it's really cool for me, being that like I always wanted to do interviews, always wanted to be an entertainer, but like you've always been someone where you were like a mythological creature. Like you're doing all these things. I'm like, damn, Fifth God's doing that too. Like, fuck, man. And then to hear you doing a podcast, I'm like, fuck yes, dude. If I'm doing the same shit that he's doing, I must be on the right path. But one of the things one of the things I really appreciated you was on your social media. I'd see you posting about kind of your relationship with the sacred and kind of getting to know more about plant medicines and sacred plant medicines. And I kind of wanted to ask how that journey began for you and what led to that.
Beautiful, man. Honestly, the topic of plant medicines and honoring the sacred and these spiritual practices that I've developed over the years, that's like the real meat of what I like to focus on in my life as of now. And, the podcast certainly reflects that, and I hope to continue to reflect more of that. But this is the stuff that really nourishes me so that I'm able to do all the other things that I like to do, as you've mentioned. So for me, I think being a first-generation American definitely deeply influenced my spiritual beliefs, because my father is from Iran and my mother is from Jamaica, and both of them kind of grew up in the countryside. So they came from a very different background than the places you and I grew up in here in the West. And I say that influenced my spirituality because I would hear some of the like older generation stories when it came to just different practices and different ways of life, and people who are really connected to the land in a much different way than we are today. People who they had to grow their own food to eat,
right? And
they had to if a child was sick, there was no walking to CVS. You had to walk into the jungle and pick a plant to help this person, And I think that even if I wasn't aware, knowing that my grandparents knew about herbs and knew about these natural remedies, I looking back, I see how much that actually did influence me. And I'll circle back to this, but I would say eventually down later into my life, I saw an importance of carrying some of these traditions and practices, because without this knowledge of honoring the sacred and having a close relationship with nature, none of us would be here today. And the future generations may not be here either unless we and they learn some of these practices.
Seriously.
So, yeah, man. So I would say what really, started my path when it came to plant medicine was, there's a typical archetypal story of the wounded healer, and I'm not by any means saying I'm a healer of any sort. I actually don't even like that title. But I was, there's this mythical archetypal story of, the people who are able to help others need to first be able to help themselves, and usually undergo some type of physical or mental illness themselves and find their way out of it. And I can say that's definitely reminiscent of what happened to me. When I was 19 years old, I grew up, even though having a Caribbean mother and a Middle Eastern father, I still grew up having the typical American diet, which is just trash, as everyone knows. Just eating junk food, and I was probably the pickiest eater amongst my brothers. And I was just stubborn, and I eventually paid the price for that. I ended up getting pretty sick by the time I was entering my 20s. And I was having all of this, pain in my stomach and my intestines. And I wasn't able to digest food properly. And I was feeling really lethargic and low energy. And I really saw that something needed to shift in my lifestyle. And at this point in my life, I had a couple older brothers who were already vegetarians, and I saw how becoming a vegetarian for them enhanced their lives. So I said, okay, let me give this a shot. I did a 3-day fast, which I was always curious into fasting, especially during that time. But because I've seen some of my older brothers do it, and fasting is something that continues to come up when you study different spiritual doctrines. It's just a form of giving the body a break and really replenishing yourself on a different level. It's funny because as I speak, I'm seeing all these different avenues we could go down, but I'm going to try to keep it concise. But yeah, I did a 3-day fast, and after that 3-day fast, I could no longer eat meat, even when I tried to. So I was kind of forced to become a vegetarian. And as I became a vegetarian, I eventually became a vegan, and
like fully vegan, no cheese. Yeah. Damn. What made you what made that change from vegetarian to vegan?
Yeah, so I did the 3-day fast, and it was a really spiritual, transformative time in my life. And as I said, I tried to eat meat again after that. I couldn't, so I went vegetarian. And then I kind of saw the more that I cleansed myself and took some of these heavier items out of my my daily menu of food, the better I felt. So I kind of just went all the way. I was also dealing with some breathing issues regarding my asthma. So for people who don't know, dairy, especially modern dairy products, lead to congestion within the lungs and many other places in the body. They're very mucus producing. And when you have breathing issues, mucus and phlegm is like your worst enemy, So I kind of just decided, let me give it a try. And I felt so much better that I just kept it going. And I kept it going for a solid 5.5 years, which was super, super beneficial. But we can circle back to that as well if it happens naturally. But this change in my diet, I would say, is what made me become a little bit more aware of the power of the natural realm when it came to plants, just on a healing level, not even on like a entheogenic or psychedelic level yet, but just on like a real practical level of learning, some basic plants to create these natural remedies. And I was getting super interested in that. Eventually, my studies in herbalism led me to studies into anthropology and studies of how different cultures of the past use herbs for healing. And as you go down that route, it's inevitable that you're eventually going to find out that these communities, these past cultures, our past ancestors were also using other plants for healing mental illnesses or spiritual maladies as well. And as most people know, or as most people may not know, a lot of these plants are what the West would consider psychedelic or psychotropic or hallucinogenic. And at this time, I became really interested in these different kinds of plants. Ayahuasca, mushrooms. I was always interested in mushrooms because I dabbled a bit in my teenage years. But peyote, San Pedro, these other things. And back in December of 2015, going into January of 2016, I had just graduated college. It was like my first time not being in school since I was a toddler, basically. And was kind of just having that feeling of that many graduates feel of not knowing exactly what to do with their lives right after college. And it was winter time. I was in a super inward and reflective state and was going through like a disappointment with a certain relationship in my life. And this was at like the peak while I was studying a lot of shamanism and different spiritual practices with these plants. And one day the idea just popped in my mind to, look up that ayahuasca stuff that I used to read about, when I was younger, and that I was kind of beginning to read about again. And for those who don't know, ayahuasca is a traditional plant medicine from the Amazon, which is a visionary plant medicine that is used for various healing purposes. And we can go into that a bit if we want as well. But I became really interested in it and wanted to travel down to South America to possibly experience it. And I eventually found a place that seemed like a really safe and well-renowned and respected retreat center that offered this medicine in an indigenous setting. And I went down to Ecuador that February and had a 10-day retreat focused on ayahuasca ceremonies, San Pedro ceremonies, temazcals, which are sweat lodges, and some other healing modalities. And that was basically my first real introduction to some of these ancient ceremonies. And it has been a part of my life ever since. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but...
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. The journey is so deep, it's kind of hard to specify or focus on exactly which parts of it I should even share.
No, I'm glad you're taking your time with it. And that's, part of the reason that I wanted to bring you on is that, I have tremendous respect for these plants and the cultures that use them. And it's a shame. I don't always want to villainize people who don't respect it as much, but it's a shame when people just see these plants as like recreational, which they can be, like I'm not saying, you can't have fun with plants, man. I would never tell someone not to live their life, but like, I also really appreciate when people take them for the benefits that they have and the seriousness and like the sacred that comes with them.
Yes, of course, because without that sacred understanding, many of these things can be dangerous,
right?
Actually.
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't understand is, a lot of people see maybe the form of there being a formal ceremony with these plants as kind of like woo-woo or unnecessary or like theatrical, but it's really not.
Right.
It's everything in ceremony is there for a purpose and a reason. And it's all centered around honoring the sacred. It's all centered around reverence, because without that and without the guidance of maybe someone who's been through these things, many of these things can be dangerous because you're not in your ordinary state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And they're also meant to be used with intention and not only for getting fucked up and high.
Right.
I mean, not for those purposes at all. So the reverence of it is a necessity. And that is the reason why I decided to travel down to South America. I wanted to make a commitment. I didn't want to go to a Brooklyn basement and drink ayahuasca.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Which is a lot of what's going on. I'm not knocking anybody, but
right.
When you have something that is so sacred and not from this land, so accessible to you, you kind of you don't prepare in the same way as you would if you were actually going down to the area in which these powerful medicines come from,
right?
And sitting with people who have a multi-generational lineage, which has trained them in how to conduct these ceremonies in a safe way. You don't have that same level of preparation and respect, I believe, if you are eating McDonald's at 3 p.m. and going to drink ayahuasca at 7 p.m.
Exactly. You're not respecting yourself or the plant at that point.
Yeah, completely. And that's where many things can go awry, and where you hear some of these stories. People who are doing these things without the proper respect, preparation, and just having the right people around them as well. So for me, I wanted to really go down to the source and connect with these plants and these traditions in a very authentic way. And I always say that going into ceremony and experiencing some of these traditions felt like a return to home for me. I felt like something ancestral was awakened within me. And it's been like the real cornerstone of my life, I would say, ever since. Because I think so many of us, I still fall victim to this sometimes. We just go throughout life without ever understanding where everything comes from. Like we go and we get a avocado toast at a nice deli or something, And we don't think about that, like, the earth provided me this food.
Right.
We don't even give thanks for it. And if we do give thanks for it, we say thanks to the Ak at the deli, which we should, of course. But it's important. It's important to give thanks directly to the earth and to spirit, which is providing these things. Because when we have an understanding that everything we consume, everything that sustains us on a physical and spiritual level comes from something far beyond us, we typically tend to care for the earth in a more respectful manner, And, yeah, man, just going down to South America and learning about these different plant medicines and experiencing these sacred teachers, other than the deep healing that I received on a physical and emotional level, they also shifted my perspective in a way where I just begun to honor the life that surrounds us all and honor the earth that provides us so much sustenance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I was imagining as you were speaking, like, damn, imagine if everyone on the planet still took part in or was exposed to these types of sacred healing rituals, like what kind of world we would have.
Yeah, I think about that often, man.
I'm sure. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, just for the people listening, because I do want this episode to influence people to kind of have that conversation within themselves, could you kind of speak on the healing and your journey since, like, first going down and experiencing these ceremonies for yourself?
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, it's a common question people ask me, like, what changed for you after experiencing ayahuasca and San Pedro and the sweat lodges and all that stuff. And for me, I can only speak for myself, because you ask that question to 100 other people who had these medicines, and you're going to get 100 different answers, course, because everyone has such a unique experience. Right. But for me, it really shed light on what was most important for me within certain relationships in my life. Almost all my relationships, but it really shed light on what is most important in life to me. And that is having a healthy relationship with those you love, and being able to express yourself honestly and openly, and really understand that if there's someone you really love and care about, and there's something lacking in the relationship or something not being said, that those things need to be faced and addressed, because it's worth it, and life is too short not to do that. So for me, something that I experienced was, or learned from the medicine directly, was just how to better connect with the people I love. And it's something that I think I've always attempted to do, but these plant medicines definitely also have a tinge of allowing you to kind of understand the what is the word I'm looking for? The how fleeting life can be. You sometimes encounter a figurative death while you're on these medicines in some capacity. And through actually having to face the possibility, or not the possibility, but the certainty that you will not be here one day in a physical vessel, and your loved ones won't either, that has placed me into a perspective of making the most out of every minute with those I love. So it kind of made me stop sweating so much of the small stuff, at least on a certain level. Even as I say that, I know there's moments in my life still where I do that. Right. But in a general level, that's something that helped me a lot with. On a let's just get materialistic for a second. On just a material level, it definitely helped with my physical vessel. I received a lot of deep cleaning, specifically from grandmother ayahuasca, as they refer to her, because for those who don't know, this blend of these two plants, which form the medicine of ayahuasca, is considered a purgative in the Amazon, and that is something that makes you purge or throw up. And that is a deep process of the experience, is this process of release, this process of detoxification. And, it's pretty gnarly. You drink the medicine, specifically ayahuasca, I would say maybe 8 out of 10 people throw up. I mean, it's a very common experience. And it's interesting because the medicine is certainly cleaning you out, and we can get into some of the science of it if necessary, but it's certainly cleaning you out on a very physical level. But paired with the physical action of purging and vomiting is a psychological aspect. Many times as people are throwing up, they're envisioning some type of release of trauma or of pain or of grief or something they've been holding on to. And, since this is a medicine that contains dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is a very strong psychoactive molecule, you have visions while you're on this medicine as well. And sometimes as people are throwing up and they look in their bucket, they even see the things that they've released, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
There's a palpable, there's a real palpable sense of knowing, like, I'm releasing this piece of grief, this trauma. And sometimes you don't know exactly what you're releasing, but sometimes you do. And that pairing of having a physical cleansing while also having a psychological cleansing, for me, was very, very healing, just to say the least. And I also want to just put out there that none of this stuff is like a magic bullet or panacea, and that you experience a couple ceremonies and you're healed from all this stuff. It's an ongoing process. But what I believe these plant teachers do and these medicines do is that they provide you a key to a doorway that you can enter, and then you have to kind of earn that right to stay in that place. So typically on the medicine, you'll receive certain messages of certain things maybe you need to change in your life, things that you yourself already knew without even having to take the medicine. But, as a wise grandmother or grandfather would do, they kind of just school you a bit. And then it's up to you to take that advice or not. So for me, when I experience some of these ceremonies and teachings, yes, I receive a physical cleansing. I receive like a sense of spiritual nourishment, just the act of community and gathering in a circle and sharing stories and songs is all very, very beautiful. But where the meat of the benefits come in is actually implementing the things I've learned. Because as you could tell somebody exactly what they need to do, but whether or not they do it is completely up to them. So for me, that's where a lot of the benefits have come in, is also keeping myself responsible and disciplined. If there's something I know that I can do to help me, to kind of pay my respects to the source or the spirit that kind of let me know that, and take action towards taking some of those steps. Because I don't really believe in the concept of sin too much, but I do on a level, and what I do believe is a sin is to receive a massive blessing or a piece of guidance from spirit itself and not follow up on that suggestion, So,
yeah, I hear that. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, we all know, just on an everyday level, you experience a tough lesson, right? Like you do something stupid that you end up paying for. And at that point, you get to decide, like, oh, am I going to do this again? Or am I going to learn from the lesson? And if you don't, the lesson comes back in a way tougher and even more painful way, So, yeah, man, I'm rambling a bit now, but those are like a couple of the benefits I've received.
No, I really appreciate what you think is rambling, man. I think people are going to as well. This is really, I really can't express enough how grateful I am, because I don't know too many people who A, have had these experiences, or B, who could relay them in such a absorbable way. You have a way with words, sir.
Thank you, man. Thank
No
you.
problem.
And That brings me to something that just also is a deep lesson I received from the medicine, if I can share, is that, something I've been realizing as well is that, we all have these insecurities, right? Everyone has insecurities surrounding certain things, whether they want to admit it or not. But personally, on my path, that is something I've experienced deeply, is feeling like I don't have the capability of articulating myself exactly how I want to, and sometimes doubting that, and realizing that that is just some type of fabrication I had made in my mind out of, I don't know, something I experienced in childhood or some type of fear, because when I have people like you who I really respect, and others as well who say something like that I have a way with words, or that I'm speaking in an articulate manner, that really helps me see that a lot of these insecurities I have and others have are just like fears that aren't based in any reality, you know? So that's something the medicine has taught me as well, is like, yo, man, stop judging yourself so much.
Right?
Like you're good, you know?
Yeah.
And,
I try and tell other people that too. Like, we're our own, and I don't want to say everyone feels this way, but I feel like more people than not, like, we're horrible to ourselves. Like, we don't deserve it, man. It's crazy.
Completely, man. Yeah, I think we all can do better at treating ourselves with some love and compassion and less judgment. Completely.
Seriously. Well, I really appreciate that. And then that question was going to lead me into, and you kind of touched on this, but what's one of the, doesn't necessarily have to be from plant medicines or from that experience, but what is one of the most important things that you think you've ever learned?
Oh man.
I gotta throw some tough ones in there.
Yeah, for sure, man. They're all kind of deep questions, which I know also, like, a lot of these questions could lead to us having like a 4-hour Joe Rogan podcast, you know? So that's why I'm kind of like jumping around, like, when I tell my story of my journey, you know, because there's so much that goes into it. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned, I would say, well, one micro lesson, which is not going to be the answer I give you, but one micro lesson I've been learning lately is to pause before speaking or answering a pretty big question. You know, sometimes we just want to like give an answer right away that we don't give ourselves time to think. So I'll practice that right now. I'll just take a breath and think about this question.
That itself is amazing.
Yeah. It's a jewel that's been given to me for sure. Well, I would say a lesson that I can't remember a point in which I learned it. Maybe it's just an essence that I've been carrying since a kid. But I have this belief that any message you want to deliver to somebody is always a peaceful and gentle manner that it can be delivered in. And I bring that up because sometimes we have like a really deep or heartfelt message you want to give to someone, specifically a loved one. Sometimes it can come off either as judgmental, condescending. It can be delivered in an angry way or an annoyed manner, and then the message isn't received as well. So something for me that I've been practicing throughout much of my life is delivering my messages to people in a way that they can digest, that is unique to them. So kind of seeing like, what does this person need right now? What is the type of language they need to receive this message in? And let me tweak my message so that they are more able to receive it in a wholesome way. Because sometimes we let our emotions get the best of us and we just like spit something out at somebody and then they get defensive, you know? And something I've learned early and I'm still continuing to learn now is just how to best deliver some of my words to people, even if it's not something confrontational or conflictual, but anything, you know, just learning like, how will this person best receive the words I have to say? And that takes conscious effort because, as you see, I mean, things are so inflammatory right now, and in the media and in just society in general. I think a lot of it comes because people don't think like, how can I best deliver this message in a peaceful manner? It's more so just like, oh, I'm my ego and I want to get my message out. I don't care how you receive it, you know? Which to a certain extent, we love some of those people who are like unapologetic and just speak their mind. But for me personally, I think there's a lot of power and weight in actually considering how the listener of your words can actually best receive what you're expressing. So
I really appreciate that. I appreciate that answer a lot.
Great, man.
No, seriously, it's so funny because I know I was literally having this conversation the other day. Like, it's wild that was your answer because the other day, I'm just gonna give you a personal story. I was talking with my mom, and we were talking about my podcast and some of my episodes. I'm talking about really important issues, but I get emotional and angry while I'm talking about it. And she's like, Will, you gotta be a little less belligerent. Like, you're just, you know, like they're not there. Like, you know, you gotta judge your tone. But in the moment, I was like, whatever, Mom. Like, you don't get it, man. Like, I'm trying to reach people. It's like, as I moved away from the conversation, I was like, God, she's right. Like, I need to chill out. So it's funny you say it because I've been trying to be really careful. Like I said, like, I have intention with my words. And like you said, man, you can lose somebody really quickly, even if you're saying the perfect thing, if you don't say it the right way.
Yeah, completely, man. And that's not to say not to be passionate about what you're sharing, you know, because passion itself is a powerful way of conveying what you mean, you know, but it's just having control about that, you know, it's just having control over how you, you know, controlling your passion rather than it controlling you, basically.
Seriously. No, it's you're on point, man, and I listen. I needed that, so I appreciate it. I needed that. You co-signing my mom on that, because she's gonna hear this and be like, I fucking told him. He's hearing it from someone else. Yeah, that's mad funny.
Well, that's usually how certain lessons we need come to us. They begin to be repeated from various sources. You know.
Seriously, no,
yeah.
I was speaking on that the other day to a friend. I was saying, like, sometimes I'll say something and it doesn't even feel like it's me saying it. Like, I'm like, this is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but that's a big thing that plant medicine, spirituality, meditation, practices of connecting with self has helped me with, is allowing that higher and more truer voice come out of you naturally, to the point where sometimes you say something or you write something and you're like, damn, was that me or was that something else, you know? And a lot of these practices help you get into that state more often, where you're allowing source, you know, great spirit, creator, God, whatever you want, whatever name you want to give it. When you get into these states, you allow that that source just to speak straight through you, you know? So yeah, man.
So for some of my listeners who might not be as familiar with these practices and these, what are some ways, and everyone's on their own path, but for anyone who's trying to kind of begin a path to spirituality or self-betterment or self-fulfillment, what's a recommendation that you'd make for them?
Well, I think I'll make 3 right away, or at least 2 right away.
Cool.
And the first would be to get your physical self right. You know, get your health right. Because at the end of the day, you could have, you know, you can have the most like top of the line, let's say like gardening hose, you know, I don't know, that's just an example that's coming through my mind that I may have heard before, but like you could have this awesome like gardening hose, right? That like, you know, the water like flows through it beautifully and it could water like a huge field. But if that shit is blocked with some mud and like a bunch of nasty gunk, it doesn't matter how nice the piece of equipment is, you know, the water's not going to be able to flow through it. So you got to get your physical vessel right so that you're able to receive these like states of peace and bliss and guidance from things that are beyond you. So as I said in my own personal story, getting my health right and changing my diet and finding a diet for me that worked well was crucial for my spiritual practices. So, you know, I'm not going to give anyone any specific dietary advice because everyone is different. And I'm definitely not dogmatic when it comes to diet. I'm not even vegan any longer. I actually eat meat now. And the same reasons that pushed me to become a vegan pushed me to begin eating meat once again. Because I was never someone who was dogmatic and said, this is the way I'll always be. I've always been someone who said, I'm just going to listen to my body. So the body itself will direct people to what they need to be consuming to nourish themselves. So hopefully people can educate themselves on that level as well. And that would be the first step. The second step would be to simply get still. And by get still, I mean spend some time just sitting in one place, not on your phone, not with a notebook, not even with a book, not watching anything, just pure silence. Get still. You can breathe. You can even think. You don't even need to meditate at first. You can let your mind go crazy. But just get still. We're living in a society where there's just constant movement all the time. No one ever just takes a moment to just sit with themselves. And I think that's the cornerstone of the oldest spiritual practices is just simply sitting with yourself and seeing what comes up. And from there, I would say, of course, maybe start practicing some meditation, some mindfulness practices, focusing on your breath, things like that, super beginner steps of meditation, which are so accessible nowadays through these various apps and lectures and books you can study, and then you can go on and do it by yourself. But I would say, yes. Secondly, get still, because that's what's going to connect you with the deeper aspects of yourself that sometimes get lost when you're just busy all the time. And third, to connect with, spirit, or to strengthen your spirituality, would be to get out into nature, man. I mean, it's really that simple. Get out of the city, get out of the concrete jungle, get out of the streets, get out of your house, and go to a forest or a park or a body of water. Because in nature, you see the cyclical movements of life itself, just being amongst the birds and seeing them look for seeds and food and building their nest, and seeing the trees, the way they grow and they reach for the sun, and how, in the fall they drop their leaves and they go into a state of rest. And then by spring and summer, the trees wake up and they start pulling more water from the ground, and their leaves grow back and they embrace the light again. All of these cycles of nature are very symbolic in a way for the lives of humans as well, because they're symbolic on a psychological level of understanding, but they're also literal because we are a part of nature. I mean, even on my podcast with my homie Blank, he's an incredible farmer, and we were speaking about nature. We were speaking about the idea that people even need to feel the need to go into nature, not even knowing that they are a piece of nature. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty sad sign of how disconnected we are, that we even need to travel to a park or a forest or something, whereas back in the day, it was just surrounding us all the time and we knew we were a part of it. But yeah, man, I would say connecting with nature on some type of level, at least, I mean, I almost am embarrassed to say it, but at least once a week. I mean, it should be a lot more than that, but at least once a week, spending an hour in nature. Even if you live in the city, just going to a park. I don't care if it's Central Park, it could be wherever, but just connecting with some wildlife and trees and flowers and all of that, I feel nourishes your deepest self, because we're dealing with an organism, the human biology of ourselves that has been immersed in nature for millions of years. And within the past, 150, 200 years, we've become completely detached from that immersion in nature, and it's having immense consequences on both our physical health and our emotional and mental health. So, I think those three things, getting your health right, getting still with yourself, just getting quiet and silent, and getting out into nature are three things that could directly help someone become in tune with their own form of spirituality. Because as you said, everyone is different. I don't think everyone needs to drink plant medicine. I don't think everyone needs to pray to Jesus. Everyone doesn't need to practice, Buddhist meditation. Everyone needs to find their own spiritual practice.
Right.
And those three things I feel like can help people do that.
And they will, man. And I'm really grateful that you came on and that you shared that. You shared your story and you shared those ways people can get. I mean, I'm very grateful, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And in the spirit of your podcast, I wanted to ask you this last question because you ask it to your guests. Who are three people that you'd like to shout out and show some love to?
First, well, man, thank you for allowing me to be on. And I'll reiterate that message again when we close. But such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I'm honored to be asked my own question. Three people that I want to shout out and show some love to. The first is a duo. It's a group, actually. Blue in Exile. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Of course. Definitely.
Yeah, Blue in Exile just dropped an amazing album called Miles.
Oh.
And it's killer, man. It is such a good album. It is rare that you listen to music or a piece of music, an entire album, and you can really feel how much work went into it. Like, I'm beyond impressed by this piece of music. So I would love to shout them out. It would be a dream to have like both of them or one of them on my podcast one day. Maybe I could plant that seed right now. Hopefully it'll happen.
As you said it, I was like, I know this is going to happen.
Yeah, man. We're gonna make this happen together, and I'm gonna give you credit. I'm gonna give you credit when it happens, man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Then I'll definitely say as well. A lot of people on my podcast are shouting out people that like everyone knows, or maybe like people in popular culture, but I want to shout out my homie Everest. He's somebody that, only my close people know. He's not someone who's like crazy active on social media, but he's been like a really supportive friend for me in these past couple months. So that's someone who is on my mind and heart today. So shout out to my homie Everest. He's been holding me down in a lot of beautiful ways lately. And lastly, man, there's so many people I got so much gratitude for, man. It's a tough question. Maybe someone who I've been listening to that's been inspiring me is this guy named Michael Meade, Meade, who I suggest people tune into. He's like an expert mythologist and storyteller. He's like a carrier of ancient stories, and expert in like depth psychology, and really like well versed when it comes to the traditions of initiation and rites of passages in like other past communities. And this guy has like he has like a story, like a mythological story for like anything someone's going through in life, and he like shares some of these stories on YouTube and on his podcast. And he's like someone who I would consider a true elder, and who I've been like receiving a lot of deep gems from recently, just through like checking out his YouTube lectures and his podcast. So yeah, that's Michael Meade, man. Shout out to him. That's just a couple random.
I need that. Ones. No, I'm glad I'm glad he came in there too. I definitely need that. I actually thought of one last question for you.
Yeah, please, man. Please.
I don't know what you wanted to be referred to in the podcast, but would you be willing to go into the history behind your name?
Yeah, sure, man. I'll keep it brief because it's something that is like also incredibly deep and also continues to transform. But basically, I mentioned, this is part of the story most people don't hear. I mentioned that when I was like 15 or 14, I wanted to like be a rapper, and I was like, like rapping with my homie Blank and my other homie Age, and my name at the time, like my MC name, was Fifth Dimension, because I was super like into like quantum physics, and like I was studying all this strange like metaphysical stuff back then, and I thought Fifth Dimension was an ill name. But one day one of my brothers had his friends over, and somehow they found out that I was calling myself this, and they were just like clowning me, man. Like it wouldn't stop like making fun of me. And I remember just like getting tight and feeling embarrassed. I was like, yo, I'm just dropping the dimension. Like it sounds super corny. I'm just gonna call myself Fifth. And so only like a couple homies like knew me by Fifth, until I know, like only like 2 or 3 homies, until I went to college. And when I went to college in 2011, that was when Twitter was like really popping, and I was like really active on there, and I was making a Twitter handle, and the username Fifth was obviously taken. It's a pretty generic name, so I just put God at the end of it, like just as like a placeholder, like no intention of that being my name, But I met History, and I met all these people, and they were like following me on Twitter, and they just started calling me Fifth God, and the name just stuck.
It's a pretty awesome name. It's a good name to have stick.
Yeah, exactly. And it started to make sense in so many other ways, which I won't go into all of them. But I'm the fifth son in my family, So like, I come from a community where everyone knows my older brothers, and I grew up like going to school. By the time I came around, I was like the fifth one with my last name, So and people like know like my family around where I'm at. So like, people kind of always considered me as like the fifth son, so that's where the name comes in as well. But yeah, man, I like to go by Fifth. I also am just as happy to go by Andrew, honestly.
Cool. Yeah, no, I wanted to kind of bring it in as like the legend of Fifth God, man, because when I first heard about you, I'm telling you, it's like you're a mythological person to people that don't know you very well at first.
People have used that exact word like so many different times when it comes to me, man. And I feel like it's also because I used to like not share my voice as much as I do now. Like back then, like I was a little bit more mysterious on purpose, but with this podcast, and as I start to like, venture out, and people meet me in person, they realize I'm not like as mythological as it comes off.
I don't know, man. I might think even more so now that I've actually had this conversation with you. This has been great. I'm telling you.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate it, Will. And I feel like, and I'm not just saying this, but I feel like you have a gift and a skill in just holding these interviews, and I really like your style, man, and I look forward to continuing to delve into your podcast myself, and I wish you nothing but the most success and pleasure during this journey of yours, man.
You flatter me, and I say the same to you, man. I can't wait to hear future episodes, and it's really a point of pride that we started around the same time, because it's like, I'm not a believer in like I think I'm in competition with myself, but I like having people that I respect where I'm like, oh, all right, he has that person, okay, all right.
No doubt. It's healthy, man. It's healthy, and it's an honor. Like, I was so excited to see that you were starting a podcast around the same time as me, because I'm all about camaraderie and showing support, man.
Exactly.
So you got my support, man.
Appreciate you, man. I really appreciate it. Having the support of Fifth God is, I don't even really know how to verbalize how that feels. But thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I'm forever grateful. This was an amazing episode. I learned a ton. I'm sure the listeners did as well. I'm so grateful for you all and for myself to have had this experience. The music you all were hearing was the Fifth Tape, Fifth God's debut album. You can find the link to it in the description and more information about him as well. Please keep tuning in. Keep coming and rocking with me. Like, comment, subscribe if you do enjoy the podcast. And thank you to Fifth God again for making this an unforgettable experience for me. I will see you all next week. Thank you again for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody. Peace.
You are knowledge.
Brooklyn. Facts. What's invincible? Brooklyn.
You are knowledge.
Cause spit phlegm in the form of gem.
You are knowledge.
Brooklyn. Facts. What's invincible? Brooklyn.
You are knowledge.
Cause spit phlegm in the form of gem.
On the car, shoveling the snow off the shoe jumpers. Freestyling while I fuck with the farm. Dual numbers, bare coats on my compadres. Few runners, I put the ball in the crib with a vision of new Hummers. Now legion of believers that tag along to the leader. Check whoever come out they neck. Know the procedure. I put the ball in your crib. I'm Jake in a pair of 13s. I tell you big states where you going, that's what the word be. Say it and I mean it and you do it. The truest, like how I made a way to what I needed and I cooped it. The room smell like Yves Saint Laurent when I'm in it, so your joint is asking me to play along. Stay and kick it, I mean, fully loaded as far as a verse. Money the model, but know that my heart in it first. Hands on it for the win till I'm off in the dirt. But know that legends never die, so all of this work, do remember, right?
Brooklyn. Facts. What's invincible? Brooklyn. Brooklyn.
Pure knowledge.
Cause spit phlegm in the form of gem.
Pure knowledge.
Brooklyn. Facts. What's invincible? Brooklyn.
Pure knowledge.
Cause spit phlegm in the form of gem.
Part of my ways, I've been going through things, and I think it's time to pray like mama back in the days. I'm getting back to them days where getting money was sin, and that is all I can say when they think I'm their friend. Never, nah, cause all my niggas better, and all these hoes bounce to all your bitch probably sweaters. You in the rockin' leather with your grown man sweater. I'm in the getting cheddar like nobody fed us, like nobody get us. Can't you see we getting richer? I be talking in the future, so they don't get the picture. You be stuck in the past, stalking all those bitches. Well, I'll be on the hunt, nigga, stalking all those millions. It's nothing, fucking, no tears, no buckets. We be disrespectful, so the hoes gotta love it. She said she want a bad boy, I told her I ain't puffy, but raised in the stars, so you still gotta love me.
Yeah, homie, don't get it twisted. Flow rip rappers like rich kids on Christmas. Every witness that play witness to this witness, now know what wit is, and put this shit on their wish list, wishing that they could spit this. Lucid, true it to the blueprint of the scriptures. 50 Tyson and Tyson, her chemist nuisance be gifted. You bet I walk with a limp. I'm all about my biz, kid. Bury the pills before mama come with them biscuits. Being a dope boy, get your brother killed by them trenches. Niggas hustle for sense before they hustle they senses, thinking that we can't fix it, like we a bunch of monkeys but don't know what a rich is. Yeah, we care about our females, dog, but we ain't bitches. Had rocks before the rock, and we was bleak before Memphis. You boppers got it twisted, tone it down on your existence. Understand that a boss was once another boss apprentice. Cause shit is wicked on these mean streets, but I'm marching like Malcolm if need be. Drunk all of you from the fountain, all for you to be counting on me moving the mountain when up on these beats. They agree with what I'm writing like a retweet. Just need a copy of what I'm writing on they receipts. Any rapper that say they could burn me on these beats got a better chance of hearing a sermon from Chief Keef. Seek grief. Every time critical speak, rip beats. Way too Gladys Knights in the pips for your pip squeaks. Moguls the Gladys Knights moving slick like the pimps be a clique full of underground kings is what this pimp see. Sick, nigga.
Facts. What's invincible?